evolving. Ever going, ever evolving.
I haven't been on live like this in so long.
Thank you, Jesus. Hello. Oh, this is so good. Okay, amazing. Yes, we can see the conversations and the comments.
How exciting.
Let's take a breath. Oh, welcome, fam. What a pleasure it is to jump on here and to be sitting alongside my bestie. Who would have thought that we'd be here even at the beginning of this year? Who knew? Who knew? Who absolutely knew? So fast. Godspeed. Godspeed. Yeah, so we're practically just coming on to share our testimonies. I, haven't really shared too much of mine, but just like dribs and drabs along the way of who I was prior to the Lord and what life has kind of looked like for me. And it's so epic to be alongside my best mate and knowing that the Lord has pursued her heart in so many profound ways over many facets of her life and many seasons, which she'll share more with you on as we go. But yeah, I would love for you guys to be interacting. If you are on the live, please drop some love and live in the comments. And if you're watching the replay, please just be here as if you're live with us, because we just prayed on what tonight would look like. And yeah, there's just a massive piece on having an open heart as we share, because I did not expect to be walking with Christ in my life. So I know that there might be some ifs and buts and, some fears that might come up in you. I know that that's definitely my story of what I experienced when even hearing people's testimonies in the past and, not wanting to go down a path with God. But I'm really looking forward to you keeping an open mind, feeling the purity of our hearts, and for us to just share the truth of what's happened for us, where life has taken us, what life looked like for us prior, and where we're going with our faith so strong in the Lord as our creator, as our father. It's such an epic journey.
I love that. Just as we were jumping on, we were like, all right, cool, just to have a bit of a foundation of what we're going to speak into, where did we start, what did we grow through, and ultimately where we're going. And I kind of looked at Holly I don't know, it's just an ever evolving journey, and that's actually the most exciting thing. I had a bit of a full circle moment before jumping on this call tonight, and we'll share more into it shortly, but it's just so cool when you can really be on the other side and look back and be there is so many times where the Lord is trying to support you and is trying to he was there tapping on your shoulder in your darkest moments. And so with that, really just inviting you to have, like Holly said, an open mind and an open heart. And let's just get into it.
Let's get into it. And also, disclaimer, when you go Christ, you may end up wearing white linen. You come back. We're just rocked up like this, and we're we look the same. Thank you, Jesus.
It's also so hot here on the Gold Coast, and real talk, you don't want to be wearing clothes, but you also want to be wearing clothes, and so this is our happy medium. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I wanted to speak into was with Holly, or both of us, but firstly going over to Holly, share with the audience what was it like growing up. What was your faith like growing up? Because I know that you didn't come from the church like I did. So share with us what that looked like.
Yeah, Soph actually asked me this question the other day, and you were just so what did it look like for you? And who did you pray to, or who did you talk to when you were growing up if you didn't have God?
Mind you, just sorry to interrupt, but we've been best friends for 4 years, and this has actually never been a conversation that we had. So it's really cool, how this is all unfolding.
It's awful cycle. I mean, like yourself, maybe you've had a past family member that has passed over tragically or whatever. For me, it was my auntie, and when I was 3, she was in a tragic car accident. And so I kind of grew up in the shadow of her passing. And so whenever I was like, you know, wanting to move through something, or if I was like crying in my bed at night or going through something like challenging, I'd always call on my Auntie Rach, and I'd ask her to guide me, and I'd ask her to like take the wheel. And then going into my like later years, it was more like my granddad or my grandma, or someone, you know, in the ethos as to what that looked like. And I guess it's kind of like one of those, I didn't ever have a faith as such, but I had a faith in something. And my mum was kind of like a fingers in all pies, like loved everything, was very much into like the Buddhism. We had a Jesus photo in our house as we were growing up, like went to church like twice because she was like, Christmas isn't about presents. But we never really like learnt about Jesus or God. And yeah, that was kind of like the level of faith that we had. Yeah. Which still led me to leaps of faith. But yours is very different.
Yeah, growing up for me, it was very different. Growing up for me was, for the most part, church. Every single Sunday I was born into the Greek Orthodox Church, which does have the foundation of Christianity, but obviously when it comes to religion, they tend to, take things out of, the foundation, and I guess put their bit of a twist on it, with their cultures and things like that. I don't know a whole lot about that side of thing. I just know what I felt and what I grew through. And yeah, for me, it was just, I always knew that there was Jesus. I knew that there was God. In the Greek church, there was a lot of stuff around saints, which to this day I still don't fully understand, because with that, the services were always done in Greek. And so what was cool about that in a way was like I did kind of have to figure out God and Jesus and what that meant to me on my own, but at the same time it was really confusing because I couldn't like understand what they were saying in the services. And then with that, you know, I also went to a Catholic school. Like I spent my whole schooling, 12 years, in the Catholic school system, which left me a really confused young woman.
Drop some hearts if you've been through that same experience. I've had a lot of those conversations recently.
It's so confusing because you leave school, and then like myself, you know, I ended up getting into a relationship where like he had a whole other different belief, and it was like all of a sudden I was questioning my whole life, and none of it made sense, and I didn't really have anyone that could guide me and give me clarity that felt right. And so that's where, you know, I started to open myself up to kind of, I guess, where you came from with the whole like anything and everything kind of scope, and that's where I had gone into more so the last few years. Yeah. And it comes like so beautifully wrapped. Like if you're on live right now, let us know if you've kind of like felt super empowered in like the personal development, soul sister circles, that kind of space that comes so beautifully wrapped. And there's like this amazing light that we see. And it's of course so intriguing. And it's something that we're like, oh my goodness, like I want more of that. And you see like the people that are in there, you build communities that are in there. And that was like a huge part for me that was actually really hard to then like walk away from with Christ, and I fought it for a while, but it's another story to go on ahead. But yeah, it's a big piece in like the false light that I know. Even in saying that, sometimes that can be even like, oh, I want to click off the live, but please stay here because it's true what we're sharing with you, and like a true testimony to how good God is. I really want to share on like, and maybe just I'm just feeling like I need to talk into pleasure at the minute. I felt this as well.
Yeah.
I love that you like are saying this, because I'm like, I literally just felt this.
Okay, cool. So we come from like, you know, the pleasure world. I myself was...
pleasure also like feminine empowerment in the way of like pleasure and...
Yes.
Pussy.
Yes. And like, you know, do everything with pleasure, and like your pleasure, and like say yes to your yes and follow your yes and all the things. Like you watch my stuff from last year and it's exactly what I say.
Both of us.
Yeah, like it's huge. And it's okay, like there's so many facets. There's a lot of changes that happen. But my state of like pleasure started from a really young age. And I was actually kind of like, I guess... when social media come out and like Safari and like internet and stuff. As kids, we were exposed to a lot of stuff that we shouldn't have been exposed to. MTV was huge. I know when I was like 8, I started to like explore on myself what was like pleasureful. And so like things like self-pleasure and figuring that stuff out actually came to me from a really young age. And I feel like that was like a spirit within me, that I was trying to grapple onto a lot of things from a very young age, like between 8 and 15, was like my zone of figuring myself out. So I started really early. And then from there, I was actually in a relationship from 14. I lost my virginity really young. And my life kind of then like went between like being that girl in school that people would go to in my friend group because they wanted advice. And so that sort of just became my identity from the get-go. So then I went into network marketing when I was 18. I actually used to sell like sex toys. Like my whole life was built around pleasure. Like it's insane, but there's so many things that like just make sense in the journey, that then I was like the educator on pleasure, lubrication, like all the things, like a woman. And I was so empowered in that space because it is an empowering thing. We are humans and it's epic to understand our bodies. We're never going to forget that, and we're never going to walk away from that. That's been a big thing for Sophia and I. It's actually really scary when you become, you know, you step into the faith and you're just like, well, does everything else have to die? And it's like our flesh gets a bit confused. Our bodies get a bit confused. Everything that we felt so empowered by for so many years then feels like a lie. But we are still human, okay? So that's like a massive piece. Drop me some hearts if you're kind of feeling this right now.
I'm like getting emotional listening to this.
I'm like shaking. I'm like, but I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had. So that was like something from the get-go. I you know, even went down the line of like thinking that potentially like I was bisexual, or like, you know, all of this stuff that we're just like, oh, you know, there's so many facets to ourselves that is all a lie. But it comes down to this like self-empowerment, right? It's like, oh, empower yourself with making these decisions that are absolutely not the truth, yet we still go down the line. Whereas Sophia had a completely different story. Again, like...
Yeah, like how old did you say you were when you lost your virginity?
I was, okay, well I didn't, but I was nearly 15.
Yeah, so I was 18. So for me, there was still, like, bless my younger self, like there was still... like that godly woman, like she was still somewhat there, because, and like that was a reason, like I, like, you know, in a perfect world we would wait until marriage to have sex, right? Which is very, very rare these days, and like, you know, I'm sure we'll get to that topic a bit more later. But yeah, so there was still this piece of me that was like, I want to do this right. I want to be 18. I want to be, you know, a legal adult. And so, yeah, that kind of unfolded with my partner after 10 months of dating. And then, gosh, I went on such a journey then, you know, you start having sex, right? And you then start the hormonal contraception so that you don't get pregnant.
Yeah. That was a whole line
oh,
itself.
that is like
the devil's
15 tool right there. My gosh.
Yeah.
I spent years navigating hormonal contraception, many different pills, injections, the Marina, like you name it, I tried it. And I tried it because it was messing with the natural state of my body, of course. I was suffering with anxiety, weight gain, weight loss, constant yeast infections. Like there was so much, which, you know, we in a way through society have like normalized these things, like oh yeah, it's normal, like try another pill, whatever. And it got to a point then in my journey where I actually did start to work with a spiritual healer. And actually before that, even I do want to acknowledge the fact that I did start drinking Kangen water. Because this is only something that I've recently realized actually really did save me and my menstrual cycle. But yeah, anyway, so I started drinking the Kangen water. That was when we started the business. And then, yeah, I also, a couple months later, started working with a spiritual healer, and she brought a lot of light to my womb. And it's funny because when I think back to our first call, she actually encouraged me on that first call to buy my first ever wand.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. And from there, really kind of taught me from the get-go that the way to connect with myself and feel empowered was through self-pleasure. And also, like, was a way to get more confident in the bedroom with my partner, and
I've preached it.
all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, I loved it. Like, once I kind of got to know my body a bit more, like, I really, really loved it. Fast forward a few years, I became very known as this, like, pleasure queen, this, like, dark feminine warrior goddess who was, like, all about death and rebirth. And, you know, I was someone that was constantly in the battlefields.
It's just a rebirth. It's just, yeah. You will get through.
That people praise
It's empowering.
me for. People praise me for.
Well, she's crying on social media again. It's okay.
Yeah, people really praise me for, you know, the constant battles that I was overcoming. None of us, I guess, know until we know what we're going through.
Yeah.
Or until you listen to people talk like we are right now. And yeah, like Holly mentioned, you know, a big part of, both of our identities was, the pleasure aspect. And gosh, you know, this is no way to shame any woman that pleasures, like, this is a big thing for me that I'm currently navigating. It's just how we go about these things. It's like there is a way to connect with yourself and honor yourself as a woman versus have this little ick in your head that's like, you need to do this to feel good enough, and you need to do this to feel worthy, and you need to do this to think these thoughts about men. And that was a really big thing for me. Like, I don't really know. It's so interesting, like, talking about these things now, because there's things that's like, you know, this stuff is sacred, right? Like, we used to just talk so openly and freely about these things, which isn't wrong, but also in the same way, it's like,
our bodies are,
these things are really sacred, and some things
and
shouldn't
that's for your
be
husband.
like,
that's how
super exposed. And we're navigating this literally as we speak. Like, we're not
every day
perfect. We are really navigating this, like, in the moment kind of thing. But it's huge. It's like, we as women, like, we're designed to create babies, and that gets to be really praised. Like, we don't need to be out here showing off our bodies and you know, dancing around, like, on cameras. Like, you know, absolutely praise yourself and dance in front of the camera, but do so for you, do so for the Lord, like, do so for your future husband. Like, don't
and how
do
would that
it
look different?
Don't do it for the world. And so that was really where we got super caught up the last few years, and thinking like, this is what empowerment looks like. Whereas now we look at it and we're like, deep down, like, we were still doing it for, like, the wrong reasons. So it's a lot.
So put in the comments if you know the song Oceans, because I know that this has gone through a lot of, like, circles, and I used to play it in Kaba when I had a traditional business modality for women to, like, tap more into their sensuality and their sexuality and all those things. So this song actually pursued both of us, and I know it's pursued many of us in this space, which is really cool, because not many people know that it's a worship song. And, you know, even that word can feel scary in the beginning, like, worship, like I only know what it's like to worship my pussy in that world. Like, I was huge in that stuff, you know. Whereas, like, when we step into here, and I heard this song for the first time, I went to a event in 2019, and my best mate, Elle, well, I've got a few, but Elle actually played this at her event when I'd first met her. And she didn't know it was a worship song at the time. She also helped me in my pursuit to the Lord. But when this song played, I remember just bawling my eyes out the entire night. Like, I'm not even kidding. This was like the Holy Spirit working through me, and I didn't even know it. And I remember, like, crying and just feeling so held by this song. And I was like, what is it in this song? The song changed, and I was like, I'm fine now. But like the Holy Spirit is so present, right? And we probably feel this in so many different ways, right? It's a level of like our intuition that we speak of. And I remember this song coming through, and then I ended up going to a retreat with her. They played the song on the first night, and I was like, mess again, absolute mess. And I was like, but in love, right? It's like this unconditional love that's just like, what is this? Like, I can literally feel it through my body. That then I come out of that retreat, stepped more into like the personal development world again, stepped more into like events, soul circles, sisters sessions, and all those things. That led me down a path of like, you know, looking at oracle cards and loving the beauty of them, buying crystals for my home, having them around my house so that like, you know, it looked like a vibe, and wearing, you know, black tourmaline and all these things, which is amazing, but also still forgetting and not even understanding any of the other points, right? So in like seeing all these things on social media, this must be the way that I do it, sage my house, drink cacao, right? Do all the things.
I still love cacao.
Yeah, like all of it's great. It's all God's. Anyways, it's all fine because it's God's. But if you just give the glory to the right person. But in that, it's like, then that song kept pursuing me. And I remember like hearing worship and just being like, wow, like this is different. Like I'll play my normal music, but I'll also like, this hits different. And it hit different for a while. And then I remember my mum left a book on my, on my couch, and it was Conversations with God. I remember my partner at the time, one of my, like kind of people that kind of steered me in the right way with the Lord. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not reading Conversations with God. That is a hard no. Boring kind of thing. Not my life. And then this book kept coming up, and I remember people then talking about it and then reading it, and I recommended it to Soph, and we were just like, nah, like just all the things like just would come together. And I guess like it continued to lead me on this path with Jesus. I was already taking leaps of faith, guys. Like there was so many leaps of faith that the Lord's just like, hey, glory to me, like I'm supporting you on your path. And anyways, this song kept coming through. I'm like going into worship, and I remember hitting COVID and then just feeling like burnt, right? There's so much going on in the world that I feel like a lot of people have been saved over the last few years because of the craziness in the world. We know that there's a lot of demonic stuff going on. We know that there is a satanic thing going on in Hollywood. We know what it's like in the big world scheme of things. So it's like there must be a level of light that counteracts the darkness. There has to be, right? So that's kind of where my head started going. And then my friend Elle was going to church. And I remember being like, well, I just want to go to a live concert, and there's none at the minute. And I want to be in a group of people that have hope in life. They have a faith in something other than themselves, and they play music at church. So I'm going to go. And so I started going, and it felt like free personal development. Like I started to understand God. I started to understand the Holy Spirit. Absolutely despise Jesus still. Straight off. I was like, nah, it's not for me, and I don't know, and I don't understand it. So I kind of went to church for like 2 years without even, you know, speaking about Jesus or even really sharing that I was going. Invited like a few friends along the way, and it was just always like, come because it's personal development for free. That was kind of how I'd step into it. And I don't know if you guys have been, let me know in the comments, but yeah, there's just like this different atmosphere about church. And I went to like a small family church at the time, and I just felt really encouraged in my life. Like I started to see things in a different light. I started to notice that like, oh, okay, maybe the way that I was doing things in the past actually isn't, you know, for my greatest good. But I also felt a level, I sat at the back often. I made no friends in church because I was like, I'm not worthy to have these friends, or I don't know what they're going to think of me. I can't have these friends if they're walking with the Lord. I don't really get it. So I actually like deterred myself away from that and kept it a secret for a long time and made no connections in the church. So it kind of like held back my journey for a long time. I'll pass it over to you if you want to share anything.
Yeah, going back to Oceans and how that pursued us both. It's so funny because I absolutely had heard that song over the last few years, but there is not an inch of me that can recall a moment where I heard it, even though I know because I've gone to all these events. I know Holly has played it at her events that I've attended, but I could never, I can't recall a moment where I actually heard it. Until last year in September, I went to Bali, and I went firstly for a business retreat just for 1 week, and it was actually on the last night that I'm like, there's more to the story. I actually got this, like, a tattoo for one reason that actually now has another reason. And anyways, this song, after I got this tattoo, like, it's all relevant.
Washing off on you? You
No,
got ADHD
it's all, like,
now?
relevant. Like,
No, yeah.
This tattoo was like something. Anyways, yeah, I'm back at the hotel, and out of nowhere, I just, like, start singing Oceans. Like, I start singing the lyrics, and, like,
Spirit lead me where my trust is without borders.
Like, I was literally, I'm not even kidding, like, I was sitting on the toilet, and this song just, I start singing it, and
Thank you, Jesus.
I just got it up on my phone, and I just started listening to it, and I just felt so happy and held, and I was going through a lot of confusion at that point, because I just had this experience at this 1 week retreat in Bali, and I was literally preparing to go back to my life on the Gold Coast and flip shit up. Yeah, and so there's God, like, says listen to this song, because at that time I was still like, how am I gonna do what I want to do? Like, how am I gonna get myself back to Bali? I wanted to move back to Bali. I was like, how am I gonna do this? Is this the right thing to do? Like, someone listen to me, someone, like, support me, guide me. And there's God, like, trying to, like, sing this song through me, right? And then the second time I actually it just came to me, was after a sister circle. So I moved back to Bali at the end of last year, and I think it was during November. End of November, I went down to Ulu, and I went to a sister circle, and at that sister circle, like, it was so beautiful to sit there with other women, like, sharing what we're going through. That was something that I loved so much about sister circles. Like, they're not wrong. They're literally, they're kind of like church, right? That's our way of church in those spaces, where we get together and we praise and we sing and we share what we're going through and growing through, and we give advice to each other.
Feel like we're not alone.
Yeah, like, it is something that is so needed. But yeah, anyways, it was in that moment that it was the first time in a long time that I actually felt like I could just break down. And I broke down so much that, like, I couldn't even open my eyes. I remember my eyes just being, like, black. Like, I could not open my eyes for God knows how long. Like, I couldn't open my eyes, and it was kind of concerning in a way. Like, I had this little freak out, because I was like, I can't see, like, my eyes are literally burning. And that was after we had actually just, like, sung a chant, which in this chant, like, I don't really know the full extent of, like, what we were chanting.
Yeah.
It was kind of just this, like, open portal, because no matter what you believe in, right, there is the spiritual realm and there is the physical 3D realm, which is what we're in right now, right? And so it all exists, but it's like, what is correct, right? What is actually the
what
true
are you even
light?
tapping into?
What are you actually
scary.
connecting to? Because as we mentioned earlier, there is a lot of false light. So anyways, this event happens, it passes. I went back to my room, I was staying at the beach, and I just went straight to the ocean. And I just was just so thankful to, like, literally whoever, because at that time I was so, like, I was at the point of just desperation. I was just like, whoever's listening to me right now, like, thank you, because I can feel myself getting close. And so I was just at the ocean. My friend recorded a video, which I then put up on my Instagram story, and the first song that came to my mind was Oceans. So yeah, that was, like, a bit of how that song pursued me. But even then, you know, I know Holly shared a little bit more of, like, the backstory to her life. I don't really have a whole lot to share in that instinct. Very similar, Holly. I dabbled in the personal development and the spiritual world that comes with that the last few years. Got really, really into like my crystals and everything, like my oracle cards. I like had 9 oracle cards.
Soph was a witch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I wore the title of witch, and modern mystic and all of these things. And so, yeah, and like I said, people knew me as that. I really, really carried such a strong identity with that. And so, yeah, you know, I then found myself in Bali at the end of last year, and actually going back a little bit, Holly started to go on her journey. So before I actually even get into what really got me to where I am now, me and Holly had been venturing the last 4 years together. 4 years we've been friends. And in that 4 years, when I first met her...
She's seen a lot of identities of Halsey.
Yeah, vice versa. When I first met Holly, she was just like pixie little essential oil fairy gypsy van life gal.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had sort of like, I'd stepped into my spirituality and personal development, but I was still very...
She was hood.
I was also working a full-time job at the time.
Still hood.
So yeah, we've seen each other grow a lot over the time. So as Holly started to, you know, pursue the Lord and start connecting more to her faith, that really started to shift things within me. So taking it back over to you for a bit. Yeah, what was it like when you really started to like know like this is something that's calling at me?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it triggered both of us for a while. I know for myself, like, let me know in the comments if you've, you know, felt a little bit like diminished by people of the church. Let me know if you've like grown up in a situation that had you like questioning God.
Literally why I left the church.
Yeah, like the only experience that I knew of church was like a couple times that I went when I was a kid, and never actually about like God. And then other times was like Jehovah's Witnesses that I knew from school, or a Christian family that I actually went to school with that I know went through some really horrific stuff sexually with their dad. Okay. So like all that I knew was this like ick from anything. I was like, if that's what it is, I don't want it. And so when I kind of like, you know, started finding faith and starting to actually really see what was, you know, more true for me, it was hard. And for me, I was like part of groups and things that were like, you know, going through the transition of the Testimonies at the time. And I remember people like going ham on like throwing out all their stuff, and like I just felt so much fear personally in the like burn it all, like if you're part of the new age movements, you know, just get rid of it all and this is what it looks like, and all these people were like praising it, and I look at it now and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, it makes sense, but at the time it was actually something that deterred me away from the Lord for longer, because I wasn't completely sure if that was of the light either. So there was like a part of like spiritual discernment that come through for me.
Yeah, just quickly when I touch on that, like that is such a real thing, is like when you're in that space with the false light for so long, and then you're begging like for this love and this light, like true light and support, and that can be really scary, because you're like, how do I know if I can trust you? Like, how do I know if this is just something else that's going to lead me on? Yeah.
And everyone, you know, a big thing for objections that have come to me with like following the Lord is like, why would you want to put all your faith into one thing? And it's like, what would you, I don't know. Anyway, there's so many pieces. But I remember a massive part, I was doing a Kaaba session at an event, and a lady that came was a Christian, and I'm great friends with her now. She's an amazing woman in our church, but she came up to me after the dance and after Kaaba, and she was like, I loved that. I see the purpose of it, and I'll be back when you're dancing for Jesus. And I was triggered, guys. Like, I remember just being like, oh, Christians, like, you know, like, oh, like, it really, dancing for Jesus, that makes no sense to me. And I just kind of like balled it off and kept going. But yeah, like, I feel like my biggest points in my journey to even leaning on Jesus has always been at the end of relationships. To be honest, That is always my part of like where he has pursued me the strongest. And it's been the one relationship, like situationship that's gone on, but where that's come crashing down, and where I've gone like, I've got nothing and I've got no idea what this looks like without this person. Like, Lord, just hold me. And when I went over to, I sold all my things December 2022, and also moved to Bali, right? So this was like my phase of like figuring myself out. Didn't want to get a rental on the Gold Coast. Went over there, and that was when I first did prayer and fasting, and I didn't know anything of it. I just knew that my body was ready to go through some kind of prayer and fasting. I listened to a podcast that talked about prayer and fasting without even knowing what I was clicking on, and I was like, okay, Lord, like, I'm listening. And that was really where like my relationship with who Jesus was started to unfold. I didn't know who Jesus was, even though I'd been in church that much and like listened to so many sermons and heard so many like prophecies and all those things. The whole Jesus thing didn't make sense to me until this trip. And that was then when I finally was like, oh, this is the unconditional love that I've been searching for my entire life. This is what actually makes sense, and this is what I've been chasing. And I don't have to be anything in order to talk to him. So if you're at a moment right now in your life that you're just like, I don't know where to go, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what this looks like, it's like you can actually just be like, hey, you don't have to say the name if you don't want to, because sometimes that's also scary in itself, but just like, hey, Jesus, bro, this is how I used to pray. You know what I'm going through because you're here. Like, you're literally with me. And it's insane. I was like, what is this? You know, that was how I would pray. And I would just have a conversation. And it started probably because of conversations with God. Maybe that was a long time ago. But I'd actually just chat and I'd just talk to him. I didn't end it with thank you, amen, in Jesus' mighty name. I didn't. It was just like a chat with a mate that kind of was on the path with me, I guess, what we were craving in those circles and stuff along the way. And when I was in Bali and I was on my own, I remember like driving on my scooter. Who's ever rode scooters in Bali? But like terrifying. But I'm like fanging it down this back road in the back end of Bali, pitch black, no lights, roads trashed. And I just get this unwavering amount of fear, right? So I'm freaking out, and I'm like, I'm in the pitch black. I've got no idea who's in the, like, everything was going through my mind. Something's about to attack you. Some person's going to come out and like kidnap. I just had all of these thoughts, and I just started going, Jesus! like
actually take the wheel.
Actually take that. Jesus, take the wheel. And I'm literally like, Jesus, all the way home. It's about 5 minutes. Just Jesus in a Buddhist, a Hindu country, screaming. And I got home and I remember just being like, I just feel so much peace, right? For the first, I was like, he actually showed up. What the heck? I need to know more about like who this guy is and like what that looks like. And within that next couple days, I had my bank card be taken by an ATM. I had nearly $0 in my account. I couldn't even get a flight back to Australia. I went on a plant medicine journey. You're silly, which then took me through another spiral. But that's a whole other piece in itself.
You were also having nightmares.
I was having a lot of nightmares before I left. I was actually having nightmares that these two large Balinese looking men were actually breaking into my villa. And I had some horrible things happen to me. I literally relived this consistently for about maybe 5 to 7 days before leaving, but didn't tell anyone. Maybe told Soph, but I remember I didn't tell anyone those things. I remember like writing police reports in my dream, like I could physically see these people's faces. So there was like signs that I shouldn't have gone, but I wasn't willing to listen. I wasn't willing to obey the call. I wasn't willing to like actually do that thing because I wanted my will. I wanted to move to Bali. It was a me thing. And then everything kind of fell around underneath me. I remember giving like all my stuff to the cleaner of my villa before I left. I had to borrow some money from a friend in order to get my flight back. And there's just so many things that went wrong. And that was like a really fearful place of, you know, me being like, okay, what are my family going to think? What am I doing? To then land and them also be like, I actually kind of get it. And that was like such a freeing thing in itself. But I feel like in this motion, guys, like I kind of went about this without Soph to an extent. Like, I knew that Soph had like grown up in the church and like her life looked a certain way. We'd both walked away from that. Soph knew me as one thing, I then now was another, and I didn't really know how to like communicate that. Did I go off on a tangent?
No, it's all relevant.
Yeah. What was your question? But I didn't really know how to communicate any of what I was going through, and I was just like, guys, like, I've got no idea. You know.
Yeah, it was big. Like, I knew Holly was over in Bali going through this stuff. And then she came back and she really... Oh, because you went back to WA, actually,
Yeah,
before Holly even got back to the Gold Coast. Yeah, she went to WA, and that's where you really just... It was beautiful because I remember when Holly was going through it all, like, she was absolutely stripped. Which
literally stripped fully. Like, my business, I had no business, I had no car, I had no relationship, I didn't really have like a community around me that understood what I was going through. Like, I actually had nothing. He stripped me of my identity, which was a blessing, but it was hard.
Yeah, and I remember you going back to WA and being like, like, I just need to be held right now. I just need to be supported, and right now I know that I
wanted my nan to cook me dinner.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a princess.
Yeah.
I was just like, I just want to be a baby again.
Yeah, I remember that. And then you'd spent a few months there, obviously continuing to get to know God, continuing to get to know Jesus, and then you came back to the Gold Coast. And it wasn't the Holly that I knew. Like... It was so wild. I remember just like, we were both just so confused. We were just like, she didn't know how to talk to me. I didn't know how to talk to her. It also wasn't like done. Like, Holly she still wasn't grounded in
my faith.
Her faith.
No. I fought it for a really long time, guys. Like, really long.
Yeah, and so I think that added even, like, another level of confusion, because I was like, I was seeing her go through these like mental wars with herself, with the enemy, like, and I was, you know, I wanted to support her, but like I also didn't know how to because I hadn't gone through it, and but there was still this light on you that was, you still knew like, yes, this is the right way, this is what I need to pursue, I just don't know how to do this right, or like I don't know how to get to where I want to be, how to get out of this like ickness. And so that was really confronting. Like, she was using the word God, she was using how Holly was speaking and like dressing was really starting to change. And then
I actually just felt like a woman, like, as well, you know, like I came back and I was like, oh, I'm actually ready to be a mum, I'm actually ready to have a family. Like, got back into a relationship that wasn't good for me, and I guess because he wasn't a Christian, there was like another level of like, well, either I can heal him and like help pursue him to the Lord, or I can try and do this on my own, but I don't know how to do this on my own. And I was in a really confused like space for quite a while.
Yeah, and that kind of got us to about July, August of last year. And obviously during the months of like, when did you get back? Like April. So between like April and July, Holly was back on the Gold Coast. But even that's, we didn't even spend a whole lot of time together.
I didn't have a car.
She didn't have a car. Like, and
and I was just going between church and being depressed and numb and confused.
Yeah, and like same, but in a different instance. Like, I was going through just constant death and rebirth and calling out to anyone for help, and I didn't know who to talk to. Like, I couldn't talk to my best friend, she couldn't talk to me, and when we would try to talk to each other, like, there was just like nothing but love, but like also like I got nothing. Like,
if Sophia was going through stuff, I'd be like, just talk to Jesus. Like, but then I knew that she wasn't open to that either. No. Like, we were both just like eggshells.
Yeah, and so I've got Holly in my ear like, Jesus God, Jesus God, Jesus God, and I'm like,
absolutely not.
And I'm starting to like, you know, like starting to kind of question my faith, like my faith in like the universe, my faith in like my angels, guides, ancestors, like whoever, because like even to this day, like I would speak to angels, guides, ancestors, but I didn't know who I was truly talking to. It really was just anyone and everyone. I don't know. I don't know what I was tapping into. Yeah, and so then I've got God, the word, just the word God, and obviously his presence. I knew God. I grew up in the church, right? So it's like there's like a remembrance that's starting to like come back into my life. But also I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it so hard. I don't want Holly to even hear me using the word God, because I'm like, if I say the word God in front of her, she's going to think that like I'm going into the Christian world and like I'm not going near there. Like I can see what she's going through. I want no part of it.
Which makes sense, because I was numb, guys, and crying every single day. So, like, that would have been terrifying. I wouldn't have wanted it either. But it was just, like, a death of my life to then be rebuilt in Christ. Like, that was my experience.
Yeah, and, like, same. But on the whole other opposite end of the spectrum, like, I was also crying every day. I remember I had moved into my, like, dream apartment, right? I was sharing it with someone, and, like, I should have been, like, the happiest. And yet I was the most miserable ever. It's wild to look back on that time in my life and think I had like this 3 months in this apartment and like I wasn't happy. Like I had my dream apartment that I spent 3 years trying to get into. And like that time went so quick because I was so consumed by darkness. I would wake up every single morning riddled and like fear and anxiety of what was going to happen to me. Like nothing good specific, but just fear. Like I just fear this darkness. Like I would literally wake up every day like holding myself, and like often waking up in like not like and just like kind of like a breath. It was like I would have this like short breath and I'm just like holding myself in protection, I guess. And so here's me calling upon anything and everything, like God, universe, whoever the fuck is listening to me, like someone help me. Anyways, I go to do my Bali turn, right? Holly had her turn in Bali, so it was my turn to go and do it.
I was in Europe at the time.
Holly had also left for Europe, and like it was over in Europe. She'll share a bit more of that, but like in Europe she went even deeper in her journey. So like we're really like chalk and cheese. I'm fighting it so hard. And obviously with that, so depressed. So
mind you, I'm saved out of Bali and she's in Bali, and I'm like,
so I go. I'm like, all right, I'm selling my car. I thought I was gonna have my apartment to come back to on the Gold Coast, so that kind of had me like comfortably go to Bali. So yeah, I went to Bali and I experienced like a lot. There is, I think tomorrow night we're going to speak more into like warfare, spiritual warfare and mental health and things like that, where we'll go deeper into like what that part of things look like for us, a lot deeper. But for the most part, like I experienced a lot of darkness in Bali. Whilst there was a lot of light. You know, I did have community. I was getting massages every couple days. I was eating beautiful foods. Like Bali, like the visuals of Bali, like is very much my aesthetic. I love the luxury and all that stuff. But what people didn't see, and what I did try to share a bit of on my social media, was like I was going through a living hell. Like my mental health was struggling severely. I actually lost my apartment while I was in Bali. Holly and Will had to like go and get all my stuff out, and so that was huge because there you go, I got stripped. I lost everything. Like I had no car to come back to. I had no home to come back to. I literally just had like my suitcase of things and a bit of furniture that had to come back to my parents' place.
Meanwhile, me and Will are like, Lord, pursue Sophia.
Holly's like praying hardcore. And like, I by that point, like by the end of my Bali trip, funnily enough, and this is the thing that was a bit of a full circle before we jumped on this call, the day that Holly actually got baptized last year was the night that I was laying on my bed just with my arms out, and I just prayed to God. And I was like, God, I can see what you're doing in my best friend's life. Like, I don't know if you can help me. I don't know if I'm enough. Like, I walked away from you. But, like, I need your help big time. Because I've got myself in some big trouble. And, I don't know what to do. but still there was such a thing of like, all right, I'm like kind of talking to you, but also not. I'm like, only when I think I need you will I come to you. So I was still really resisting his love. Anyways, came back to Australia, actually went to my hometown.
We do the same things.
We do the same things. I went back to my hometown before coming back to the Gold Coast, and it just felt like the biggest slap in my face, because I thought I was going for one reason, and it was just like, a slap in the face. It was just a very clear indicator of like, you do not belong here anymore.
And then a cyclone came.
A cyclone literally came. I had to drive back to the Gold Coast because I couldn't fly home. But anyways, got back to the Gold Coast, and the next part of Holly's venture triggered me even more.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, like I met my now fiance, which just feels even weird right now in this minute to say. Love him so much. But I met him in August, and then I went overseas for 50 days. And so like I went on this evangelistic experience in the UK and in Spain. I went to, where else? Lisbon. And I went on this journey, and I was talking to so many people of faith. I was talking to people on buses and trains and going through the streets preaching Jesus. If people come up to me asking for recommendations, I'd tell them the local church. Like I went into like a Spanish church when I was over there, and they were all just speaking in Spanish, and I just joined in on the prayer at night. Like I was just all for God. And that whole trip was just like letting the Lord show me and take me in places that I'd never been, asking the Holy Spirit to like show me people's faces that I needed to go and talk to, and then have ice cream with them. Like it was absolutely incredible. So I'm on this journey while Soph's in Bali. And then I get back, literally like come back to this beautiful man, and I'm like in this space. I'm heavily in the church. I've now transitioned from a mega church into like a small house church, and called Fire Church. Just all of these things were like changing in my life, and I'm like, ooh, okay, this is even like extra far away from all of my people in my life that I used to know, or like my old life that I used to be a part of. How is this even going to look in my life? And I remember then, like, even when you would call me, like, going through things, and we'd kind of work through it. I remember my biggest struggle with this was more like, I don't know where to guide Soph. I'm happy to listen, and I want to be a help. Like I'd been through a lot of the same similar situations that she was going in, but I also didn't know how to like lead her anywhere, because I just went to the feet of Jesus, and that was like where I was leading people from there on. Like, just talk to the Lord. How can I pray for you? What can I pray for in your life? Like, what are you actually needing help with? Okay, what's the struggles that you're going through? This is a scripture piece that like I've found really helps. Like,
and actually, like, you did plant to feel those seeds in me.
Oh,
because, like, I was so
often.
open. No matter what, with Holly's whole journey from, like, let's say December 2022, and even before, but, like, the whole of last year, while she triggered me so much, like, I couldn't be more, like, in love with her and supporting of her, because I just wanted her to be happy. So, like, whilst there was this, like, I wouldn't call it, like, I don't know, it wasn't, like, judging in the way of, like, you're a freak. Like, I would look at other people and say that, but not my best friend. But she would plant seeds, and, like, I was so open because, like I said, I had grown up in the church, and I had some kind of idea, and so you planting those seeds, but, like, not fully, like, you still held back because I couldn't receive it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I remember, like, I was driving around to Will's one night, and one afternoon, and we were just, like, pulling up, and Soph's on the phone, and I'm just like, babe, like, have you ever tried talking to Jesus? And she's like, I've been praying to everything. And I was like, absolutely, but can you just pray to him? I was like, just pick him and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And I was like, just,
before
try.
that, even back in my apartment, before I left for Bali the first time, before Holly left for Europe, I don't know if you remember, it was actually that day you were going through something, and because we were doing a photo shoot one day, and, like, Holly's identity was totally different.
Confidence in the wrong ways, and my body and all the things.
Yeah, and so we were really struggling this day to, like, do a photo shoot as we would always do for our businesses. And I think I said something like, I don't know, just, like, pray to something, anything. And like, that's what I do. I pray to everyone and everyone, because maybe that's the good thing. Because she was struggling, right? And I'm like, well, if God and Jesus are meant to be helping you, why isn't it working? Like, maybe you should try and just open it up a bit. And she was like, well, she kind of said it and like she was triggered, and then that triggered me. So she was kind of like, well, you know, it's not that good to be praying to everything and anything. How do you know what you're welcoming in? And I was like, oh. Like, I hate that you said that, because it was true and I knew that. But like, I don't
remember that, but yeah, sounds like
that's
something
always
I say.
stuck with me. Like, how do you know you're just praying to anyone and everyone? Like, what are you gonna do? Who are you praying to? How do you know what's coming down? And I was just like, I was like, shut up. I don't know. Ignorance is bliss.
Oh,
but
honey. Yeah, you know, and like, there's so many times like where you know, those circumstances can happen in our lives. And like, I know for Will and I, our relationship, like, Sophia wasn't part of it in the beginning, but she was part of it because like she was there and we were on FaceTimes and stuff, and like helping her move house and everything. But it was like the nights where we were in worship, him and I, before I'd then get in the car and drive home and then like just be confused, like just all the things, I would be praying over Soph, and we'd be laying there and just like touching on the friends that need help in our lives, and you know, all the things that I couldn't say to her at the time, we were then bringing through in prayer, and he would pray over her, even not knowing her, you know. So this was like the power of the Lord. He's so faithful. And when like, he's coming into this, like, you know, family zone of like really bringing our people with us and calling his people back through us. And that's why our voices are so powerful at the minute. But we would just pray that like she would get through the things, that God would continue to present himself to her. And that's kind of how that, you know, unfolded. And, you know, then she gets back, right? I'm like practically married. I'm, you know, baptized. You know, just all the things. Life looked very different. I'm like, yeah, everything just shifted, right? And Soph gets back, and I'm like, picked her up. And I remember us driving, and Soph's like, everything's fucking different and all this stuff. And she's like, I got no friends. And I'm literally driving her.
I did not mean
I'm driving
like,
her.
It's so stupid to know. Like, after all these years, after all we've been through, she gets so attacked by this comment. And she's there like,
I was like, well, what am I? I'm like, bro, like, what do you even mean? Like, obviously I'm your friend. She goes, but you're different. Like, and I was just like, gosh, like, please, like, I am more grounded and more consistent even in a friendship than what I've ever been. Like, just, Lord, open her eyes to like what's actually possible here for us as friends. And, you know, everything kind of just shifted. She met Will, life's kind of shifted again. And there's just been so many beautiful things in between. Like, business looks so different, life looks so different. But it does come with a whole heap of like identity crisis in the beginning, because we've been falsely built for so long, and it's kind of heavy when it comes down sometimes.
Like, I came back to Australia, and like, I was absolutely like distraught. Like, I was so broken and broke. I didn't know how to look after the money that I had made and the money I had held. Also, like, in, you know, the realm that we had played in the last few years, it was always like, invest, spend your money, spend your money. But like, no one like ever made you feel safe to hold money and to have money. My gosh, like, I know just on,
and
like,
not worship money.
I know for myself, on just personal development and like healing alone, I had calculated recently I'd spent about $30,000 in the last 4 or 5 years, which is a lot of money.
Mine's like 50 to 60.
Because you did a lot of retreats and stuff, and did
it's a lot of money, guys.
It's a lot. Especially for women like of our age, like,
or like businesses and containers that just end.
Like, there's no ROI, like tangible ROI. But anyways, so I came back broken, like, no car, feeling so trapped at my parents'
I was like,
house.
oh, I know what this feels like.
Holly's like, yes, I've been there, and I'm just like, and I know, I'm like, oh, Holly's walked this path, like, when am I ever gonna learn, like, oh, what is happening to my life? And like, at that time, still like resisting just fully like owning God, owning Jesus, just like fully like embracing him again. Because for me, I know that my resistance was because I knew I didn't align with the church that I was brought up in, and I also had such stigma and like just like I viewed, I guess, I had such a perception on, you know, even just Christianity, anything to do with God and Jesus. I just felt like it was I don't know, there was so many like that it was just for old people, or that worshiping and praising was like actually, like I thought that it was like a dark act. Like there's so much, like I thought that churches were like, you know, filled with like narcissists that like read the Bible but didn't actually implement it, which like this stuff does exist, guys. It does exist, and I know that that's where, and I can relate with so many people that have church trauma. Like it is an actual thing, and like that was a big thing for me coming back into it. But you know,
religion versus relationship.
And funnily enough, you know, also like Holly mentioned earlier, like for her, a lot of these like godly initiations did come through men, and so I very much related to that. Like just a couple little highlights, like actually it was the December that Holly was leaving for Bali. I had actually made my first ever connection with like a male Christian, and we went out on a couple dates, and I was just like, what the heck? Like he was like a, you know, what they call is like a born again Christian, so like he had sex, but like he was not having sex again until marriage, and just all these things. And so there's God, like, you know, trying to show me like, and like this is the thing, right? I was looking at this man, like, firstly, gorgeous man, like really good looking. Secondly, wanted to worship a woman, wanted to love a woman, and like build her a home, and just like be a beautiful man without like the physicality of it. And I'm there like, nah, like no, like that's not a man. And then when was it? Last year, actually, August last year.
But even when he was just like, no, I won't even kiss anyone, and I was like, well, got no self-control.
Yeah, this like, too. Even Holly was like, nah, he's
and this
weird.
was when I was in church.
Yeah, but she was like, nah, this is even like too weird for me. And then like come last year, I had another interaction with a lost man of God. So I think that's where like we connected quite a bit. But it was in that moment, this was like the last guy that I had personally like had sex with, because of what had happened like after we had sex. Like just, it was a whole messy situation. And that really woke me up, and I said to Holly, I was like, I want a man of faith. And she was, I only just found out recently that, she was pissed. She was triggered when I said, like, I want a man of faith.
Man of faith. Like, what faith?
Yeah, and that
faith
was
in
it.
what?
Like, faith in what? Like, I was still trying to figure it out, but there was like a seed again planted in me by this man that was like, I want a man of faith. Fast forward back into the now, I actually had reconnected. I had connected with a Christian guy at the start of this year, and it just kind of like, he wasn't anything more for me other than just like a messenger. I truly believe he just like kind of just finished the like triggering that Holly had already started. That just made me be like, oh yeah, no, like this is it. And like it felt right in my body, like, no, I do want a man of God. I want to be a godly woman. I don't want to be outsourcing all of my stuff anymore. I don't want to like hold it all myself anymore. It was big, and then it all happened really, really fast. I feel a big part of it was, one, I already grew up knowing so much of the Bible. I already grew up having a form of relationship with God and Jesus, whilst it looks very different now. I also have Holly and Will and so many other beautiful beings that are very solid in where they are. Unlike Holly in her journey, she didn't have that. So she's really been that for me. But then, it
can happen fast. It's really rapid and supernatural.
Yeah, super fast. And I know that has like astounded and shocked a lot of people, because it was like, it literally felt like a light switch. Like I just flicked a switch and was like, nah, I give it all to you. Like, how can I not? Like, this man, Jesus, literally saved my life. Like, he saved me from like the darkest place. I didn't he didn't reignite me, and I didn't re-meet him because of church or in a church. And I do want to really, like, you know, just speak to that and hold that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I have to go to church, or oh, I can only be a believer if I do this and do that, whatever. It's like, I was saved from the dark, and so many other people are saved from the dark also. But for me, it was like, I did want to, you know, I wanted to do, like, and I'm literally in it. This is me this month, you guys, like, pursuing my faith fully and wholeheartedly. And yeah, I truly, when I say, like, I want to be the best godly woman I can be for him. He saved my life. I owe him everything. I owe him everything. And he comes before anyone and everyone. And with that, it's like, what can I do to be closer to you? What can I do to know you? Like, I'm not here to fuck around. I've spent enough of my life in the dark. Like, I'm not here to do that anymore. Like, I want a solid business. I want a solid relationship. I want solid community. It's like, I'm not a 20-year-old anymore trying to figure out life. It's like, no, this is where I am. And so, yeah, you know, Holly actually gifted me, like, my first Bible, which was also a full circle moment. And she actually took me into the church 2 weeks ago that she goes to, into Fire. And
I was like, you want to come to church on Sunday?
Yeah.
She was like, actually, yeah. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
You want to come to church with me?
It was so funny when she asked me. She was so like, I could feel her smallness while also trying to be brave and courageous. And I was just like, yeah, like, I do. I want to do whatever I can right now to get closer to my God. And yeah, guys, like, I had a lot of fear going back into the church, also because it wasn't like the church that I knew growing up. And so I was kind of like, oh, I don't know.
She looked at me and she was like, this actually feels like a sin, like, walking in here. Because it's not like what I was used to walking into. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's like big.
Yeah, I literally said that. I was like, this feels like a sin. And it's still also, like, this was literally last week, guys.
Yeah.
And we
It moves fast.
And then we just went this
really
week,
does.
like, we went yesterday to church as well, but, like, there is still a piece of me that feels like I'm sinning and that I'm going against my church and my religion, even though it is the same God and it is the same Christ. And if anything, like, I feel way more connected and at home because of this church, and I'm so thankful for this space. Yeah, so I get it for the people that have been in the church, have walked away. God's always there for all of us. And yeah, don't let people ruin it for you. Like, I think that's the big part, is like, we hold ourselves back from, like, literally, like, peace, like, the biggest peace and unconditional love. It's like, as soon as I just gave it all to him, like, at the start of January, I just gave it all. And as soon as I did, it was just like, yeah, infinite peace, infinite love. And I could finally understand what it was that Holly was on about. I think so often, you know, we go through these experiences. I know for myself, I haven't not spoke about God on my social media like, for this month. And I think we often look at those people and we think,
I struggled,
what a Jesus,
to not mention Jesus.
Like, what a freak. Like, why
he saved my life.
Yeah. But, like, we so easily look at people and think, like, oh, what a freak. Like, talk about something else, or like, she's just trying to convince me of this. Or you could be on here right now even thinking that. You could be on here thinking, like, what are they trying to sell me into? It's like, no, we are actually just, like, praising the light, the true light that created this universe, that created us. And, like, we're giving thanks because, like, truly, he saved both of our lives, and we owe that glory to him. And if we can just be that beacon of light and continue to share our testimonies, continue to share that word of God, gosh, how many other people can we save from the darkness? Like, we don't need to suffer, and it's just all there. It's so funny how, like, we resist it so much, and then once you just finally choose it, he just, works so easily and so quickly. I'm so excited to see what comes.
Would you be open to, like, praying over people that have come from the church now? Yeah, I feel like that's obviously not something specifically that I can speak into, but maybe just like if people, I just really feel like there's people here that are watching that have been in the church, have gone through some kind of a path, or have been brought up in a certain way, that then led them astray away from the Lord, or, you know, religion has like pulled them apart and like hasn't actually grounded them in a level of love and truth, that then this conversation might actually be really hard for them to even like understand right now. So just praying into, you know, maybe setting them free from like the shackles of any of the lies that they've been in the past, and like setting them free. Yeah
Absolutely. Yeah, let's just take a moment, and if you're on live or if you're catching the replay, just to close down your eyes, and I just want you for a moment to just fully, like, even just put your arms out in front of you, just open yourself, open your heart, open your mind, and just let that wall down. Just let that wall down. You don't have to try and be strong. You don't have to try and put on a brave face. You don't have to try and be anything that you're not, because I promise you, God will welcome you wholeheartedly in any state that you are in. He does not judge you at all. And for those that have, you know, come through the church from a young age, who have left the church and are currently journeying, that are currently feeling a bit lost, feeling the unknown, feeling the uncertainty, begging for help, whether that is through substances, through people, trying to call out to anyone and everything, just know that the one that is always there, that is the true light, like, he is literally like in arm's reach. Like, just put your arm up for a second and just feel his presence all around you. Like, he is always there, just waiting for you to acknowledge him, waiting for you to just welcome him in. He is there. And know that, again, there is no judgment. Even if you did leave a church, you never did truly leave God. You can't leave him. He created you. You just...
He's calling his people home.
Yeah, he's calling his people home, and you are one of his people. So it's time to, let go of the shackles. Stop resisting him. Stop this false accusation in your head. Gosh, rebuke any of that. Let it go.
Spirit of religion.
Let it go, let it go, let it go. Any thoughts that do not serve you, just let them go. They are not your truth. And just don't be afraid to call on him. Call on him at any time, at any given moment, in your mess, your chaos, all of it, especially in all of that. Call on him, because he is the true light. And I promise you that you will feel his unconditional love and that peace within a second. I know that you can feel it right now. So just continue to tap into that. Don't worry about anyone else's journeys. All that matters is the relationship between you and him. Continue to put him first, and I promise you that he will work absolute wonders in your life, and so quickly. So just praying over everyone listening to this right now, wherever you are in your journey, like God says, do not be afraid and do not worry, because fear is not of God. Confusion is not of God. So as soon as those things start to arise, just call out to him for help, because that's what he's there for, and he will take it all away and replace it with his infinite love. In Jesus' name. Amen. He wants you to call out to him. He's always there for us, especially in our darkest moments. Just quickly, I just want to share, as we get ready to close this up, it wasn't until yesterday, like whilst this has been, you know, an ongoing journey, obviously, I was saying Holly in the car after church yesterday, like I had a real like initiation and revelation after a beautiful woman came up to me and prayed over me.
Same one that told me that when I dance for Jesus, she'll be there.
Oh, was that her?
Katie, yeah.
Oh. So what, had I met her before?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What a woman! Yeah, what a woman, alright.
Come on.
Like, she just supported me so much to move through so much. And yeah, I was saying to Holly in the car after church, I was just like, I've been holding back from saying that I had been saved by Jesus, by God. Like, just that terminology of like, I have been saved. I couldn't say it until this moment, because I felt that my life still wasn't, you know, I still don't have a brand new car yet. I don't have, you know, the super abundant, super thriving business yet again. I don't have the partner. Like, there are all these pieces that still, like, he is rebuilding as we speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I experienced whatever I experienced at church yesterday, and I was like, oh, nah, like, he's actually saved my life.
Yeah.
All glory to him. Like, if I was talking about how grateful I am before, now I'm about to go and put 20 stories up on my Instagram and talk about how Jesus saved me, and I'm so grateful. Like, God is so good. So good. Yeah, so good.
What a time. So guys, thank you for stepping in and being on this live. We'll be going live now for the next 4 days. It's continuing on different topics. Tomorrow we're going to be going into a lot of like our spiritual warfare and mental health and the parts of us that, you know, were led astray for a while, or like signs that we call spiritual warfare, and things that have happened to us throughout our journey that, you know, were, you know, kind of shaking us to our core along the way, and how we kind of got through that. So I just ask that, you know, you come in again and open your hearts, open your minds. If you feel like there's someone in your life that's really struggling with, you know, potentially, you know, some spiritual warfare, if they are in the darkness right now, or if they are really struggling with like mental health or depressive episodes, and all the things that maybe you share, that we're going live, ask them to follow this account or add me as a friend, just so that they can be part of the conversation. The biggest part is that we just continue to share our voices, to share the glory of Jesus, and what he's really done for us in our lives, so that it can just support even just one person, one more along the way. We don't know who's going to even be watching this in 3 years' time, and it's just all glory to him. Like, we're just so faithful and thankful for what he's working in our lives. And I guess like the biggest testimony also is like the way that we're sitting here right now, the glow in our eyes, the way that he just works in us. And if you guys know us, you'd see it. Like, you physically would see it, and you'd feel it, and the grace and the presence, and like the just the groundedness, I guess, in not feeling like we have to do anything in order to have him in our lives, and everything that comes in between. Like, yeah, I'm really, really excited for where this goes, the conversations that we're going to be having, and it's just such an honor to even be able to share his words, and to be able to call his people home, like through sharing. It's the biggest piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you. I can't believe that we're on this journey together still.
Thanks, fam. What a night.
So good.
Drop any comments or questions if you have any, and feel free to message us if this has actually initiated anything within you as well. He's a faithful father, and we're just really excited to walk along this journey and disciple you where it's possible, or what's ever needed as well. So I love you. Bye.